Hello, everybody. Welcome back to ZakIsCinema, place to talk movies. If you find yourself just so lonely after the holidays and just nobody to talk to about movies and you're just disappointed, well, I can't promise to change the disappointment part, but I can promise to change the lonely part. Cause come on in, welcome. It's ZakIsCinema. We're talking some movies here, everybody's favorite movie channel. Today we're gonna be sticking with our first time watch review segment. So for anybody new here, the first time watch reviews are this idea of taking a look back at some movies that I just haven't seen before. That's basically the premise. So going into these movies as a first time watch. So going in watching these movies without any preconceived notions, any baggage, any nostalgia, looking at it from that non-nostalgic kind of viewpoint. So that's kind of the idea of the first time watch reviews. First time watch review, we're talking Terminator Genisys. Let's just jump right in here. Terminator Genisys was directed by Alan Taylor. We got for writers, Latia Kalodris and Patrick Lussier. So sorry if I mispronounce those. Terminator Genisys is also starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. We got Jason Clarke, Emilia Clarke, Jai Courtney, and J.K. Simmons. So for Terminator Genisys, the story follows Kyle Reese, a soldier in a post-apocalyptic war against Skynet, as we know, who is sent from 2029 to 1984 to prevent Sarah Connor's death. And this is when Kyle arrives in the past. He discovers that the timeline has been slightly altered by Skynet, and Sarah has been raised by a reprogrammed Terminator, which is Arnold. With these first-time watch reviews, really enjoy starting off with talking about why I'm even talking about this movie to begin with. So if it's the category, first-time watch review, we're doing this shit again. Sticking with our Terminator franchise, we got to finish it up at some point, so we're going to finish it. And I always found these later Terminator movies so interesting. We're right around Genisys and Dark Fate was when I started following movie stuff online, and I always just remember like hearing about these movies as they dropped. And just with the Terminator franchise, they're constantly just new sequel, which is a reboot, and just ignoring everything that came before it. So it's just like each movie's a reboot, a new timeline. Like you don't see a lot of franchises like this, and Terminator is unfortunately one of them. This one in particular, Genisys, is rebooting the franchise again, but taking the premise of the first, doing it in a new, different direction, almost an alternate timeline. So I thought that was kind of interesting, gave me some expectations going in. Because with our couple of other movies, specifically with Salvation, it was rebooting it, but doing its own thing. This one is rebooting, but purposefully going back to that first one, doing something different with it, pretending that it's in an alternate dimension. Also, this movie has kind of an interesting history and plans that obviously never went forward, but they had plans to do a whole trilogy of movies and a TV series mixed into all three of these as well. But it was all canceled because of the reception of this movie. I think it made money. I just think the reception and fan reception was so bad they canceled everything. So knowing all of this, I kind of had really, really low expectations. You always hear nothing but bad shit about this movie. So I really just didn't have any expectations. I really just went in with curiosity. Jumping into the positives or the things I really enjoyed about this movie. Honestly, starting off with the franchise as a whole, I really don't mind these sequels trying to reboot, change the timeline, do something a little bit different. Sure, it's messy, convoluted, but that's like kind of the fun you can have with a lot of these time travel movies. You could play with your timeline, and I feel like a lot of movies don't take advantage of that. But the Terminator franchise maybe does it too much to where it becomes a problem. But I like how they're having fun with this. So we're doing the first one again, but instead of like rehashing it, it's from alternate reality. So it lets them get away with that, which would be considered a rehash. It lets them get away with it just a little bit. I don't mind these like Elseworld stories that the Terminator movies go for. We'll always have the first two, those originals. So I just like having fun with this timeline, seeing what they come up with. Next positive here is the initial idea and premise is really interesting for Terminator Genisys. We get to see the perspective this time in the future as Kyle Reese is being sent back by John Connor. In the first like 2-3 movies, we've all seen it take place in the present time for which we're watching the movie. But this way, we are not only getting a new reality, we're getting a new perspective too. When Kyle Reese is being sent back, it creates a temporal paradox that alters the timeline and causes Kyle to experience memories from a parallel universe. Like, it's just so wacky and wild, and it fits for a sci-fi time traveling alternate reality kind of movie. It fits that, it goes for it, and most of it kind of surprisingly works for me. The more I think about it, I really do enjoy that John Connor Terminator twist. I think it does what Salvation does, but does it even more interesting because it's from a beloved character like John Connor. I might not be as high on that character as most people, but still, he's the central point of our franchise here, and they add that twist to him. So I think it expands on what Salvation did and brings it into an even better character, doing a similar thing. But I know we're in the positives here, but they did spoil that in not only the poster, but the marketing and trailers as well. You think that they would have learned from Salvation to not do that? Yeah, you don't even need a lesson with this. Like, I can't even imagine who signed off or approved on spoiling that twist. Because again, just like Salvation, they treat it like a secret in the movie and it's this big revelation. But you're just sitting there saying like, yeah, you showed me that 2 months ago when this trailer dropped. Like, what are you doing? Sorry, sticking with the positives. Well, little sidetrack. Sticking with the positives here. In this movie, it is revealed to us that when John got attacked while Kyle Reese was in the middle of his time-traveling shenanigans, John was attacked and infected with a nanomachine that converted him into like half human, half Terminator. So again, expanding what they did in Salvation, but bringing something new to it. I really enjoy this twist, not only because it does something different with our John Connor character, but it shows that Skynet is trying to do something different. It shows their power and intelligence by doing something to the actual leader. These Terminator movies were getting into a bit of an issue with me by Skynet just seeming so stupid by doing the same exact thing each and every movie. Sending one person back to kill the person that they want dead. And the Resistance does the same thing. But this one, Skynet's like, all right, it's time to do something different. Let's go directly to their leader and fuck them up. And it's cool. It's cool. I think the actor does a really good job with him. Again, I love that it does something different with our John Connor character. I think it adds more to Skynet. I could see where this might play out totally different to someone watching these that grew up with the original Terminator movies and maybe not liking what they did to John Connor. I think it works for this movie. It works for this alternate reality that they're going for. I think it's really, really interesting. It's an interesting premise that at least does something different while sticking to the formula and comes across like a neat fan fiction. We'll get into some of the negatives here, but I like that sci-fi edge that it has. I say this as a positive. At this point, these Terminator movies, like I mentioned with the fan fiction, it's kind of turning into a Halloween franchise, like a choose your own adventure kind of thing, as they constantly reboot, requel. Like, it's turning into one of those where you can, watch all of them like I did. You could choose your own timeline. You could watch some, skip the rest. Like, it's interesting. There's not a lot of franchises that do that. I kind of see that as a positive. I don't think anyone should make a franchise like that purposefully, but when it works out like this, it is kind of interesting and cool to look back on. Another positive in this movie is I really like that Arnold is back. Seems to be more in it in this movie compared to our third one, like not just phoning it in. I think this movie also sets up very interesting things that unfortunately won't get paid off, but the trilogy was supposed to explain how Arnold got sent back to Sarah and why and from who, focused more on John being a Terminator and the effects of being half human, half Terminator, and how he'd eventually go back to help save the Resistance. So it has a lot of cool dangling plot threads, a lot of interesting ideas where I could see where they could center a trilogy around this. Really like the John Connor stuff. That's some of my positives for this movie. But jumping into our negatives or the things that I just didn't really enjoy in this movie, again, we get more of these cringy callback lines in case we forgot the movie that we were watching, people. Sarah opens up the bus doors like, come with me if you want to live. Looks at the camera. And it's just like, okay, we we get it. It'd be cool maybe if you want to do some fan service stuff and do maybe some different lines, but all these Terminator movies keep just using that line or the I'll be back line. It's like, I get it. We're watching a Terminator movie, but this just doesn't make your movie hold up very well. Another negative here is I do like the premise and the over-the-top nature of this movie, but I think it kind of failed to land for me because it needed a better script. When I'm watching it, I found that characters just go from room to room, scene to scene, describing what's going on, giving exposition, and explaining how they feel and how things are working and what they have to do next. Like, there's not a big overarching plot, a big overarching character arcs. They kind of just like get thrown in this situation, and then each scene they're just like kind of talking about it, and it's like, well, we need to do this next. Okay, well, this makes me feel like this, but let's go do that. It's just kind of choppy. The writing isn't up to par for what they're going for here. It sets itself up as an interesting premise, but now, like, looking back on it, talking about it a little bit more, the core plot is the same thing. And I think these Terminator movies, as they continue on, are really running into that issue where essentially when you strip down the cool little different things that they do, essentially that core plot of Terminators being sent back to kill someone and a resistance person being sent back to save someone, it's the same shit. We've seen it and we kind of know how it's going to play out. And that's how I felt watching Genisys. Another issue I had with this movie is some of the Kyle Reese stuff going on and the visions that he had. The visions that he has from an alternate reality just don't make a lot of sense. He starts by remembering new timelines that just like conveniently give exposition for the exact info needed in that scenario, even though the old memories were never explained to him, or there was never a reason to them, or never a reason for them to be popping up. They just pop up when the story needs them to. Like, it could have been interesting, a cool little thing, cool little detail to give our Kyle Reese character, but they just use it for plot conveniences and to keep this story kind of chugging along a little bit. Another negative here is what I had in our third Terminator movie is the love story. That weird, and then in this one also the love story, but the weird relationship trio between Sarah, Arnold's character, and then Jai Courtney's character. It's just cringy, feels like Hallmark drama love story kind of writing. Because of this, I could see why Jai Courtney never became a thing, because just like his movies that he was in, he comes off as like creepy and just kind of unlikable, and that's what I felt watching this. It continued the poor romance writing from 3, where they think just having a romance is just making sure the characters end up together at the end, but they have nothing to do, nowhere to go in the middle of it. So then these writers just need to create drama or something to happen with our characters. So they just have them like fighting throughout the whole movie, and then they quickly switch it in the end when they end up together, Sarah and Kyle Reese's character, like we knew they would. But then the whole movie they're just like fighting about, like, I don't even know what, like nothing. Fighting about nothing. It reminded me of just like watching my parents grow up, and you take a step back and you're like, hey guys, like maybe just don't be together. It's okay. I'm okay if I wasn't here. I'm okay. Another negative is the idea of Genisys, our new Skynet, I think it is so stupid. A new name, but just doing the same exact thing again that Skynet was doing. In this one, they try to modernize it by it being like one big killer app, and it just comes across like it was written by some out of touch like board members that were all boomers. Like, it's just like, oh, what are the kids into these days? Oh, my grandson uses apps a lot. That's it. That's our new killer, apps. In this movie, they also take away a lot of the practical effects and give us some of the shittiest 2000s CGI I have seen. John could have been intimidating as this new hybrid Terminator from this beloved character, but the effects make this further feel like a fan fiction film. I don't know what it is, just that CGI does not hold up, and I imagine it wasn't holding up very well when this movie first came out. Takes the intensity out and takes out some of the grounded futuristic sci-fi that this franchise has brought to us over the years. And the ending is very, very corny. When they find Kyle Reese, like the younger Kyle Reese, Sarah's like talking to this kid, and it's like, you know, I have a friend you should talk to. And we're all like, oh my God, it's gonna be Kyle, yeah. And then it allows Kyle to talk to his past self. But again, I think I brought this up in 2 or 3. They never addressed what those repercussions could be. Like, hey guys, like your plans seem to not be working, so maybe let's stop messing with the past so much that it impacts our future so much. They never address what those repercussions could be, and I can't even imagine what kind of repercussions would be talking to your past self. Like, that's in every single time travel movie. Every single time travel movie at least addresses that, saying don't do that because it has repercussions. In a lot of these Terminator movies, they don't address it, but especially this one, they just blatantly ignore it. Just don't think about it, okay? The ending, again, after that scene, reveals that Genisys is still alive. Just another dick tease of things never to come with some of these reboots. I guess I added that in the positive, but I could see where that could also be a negative, is because some of the interesting things that get set up just never get paid off, and then it's difficult to ever rewatch this movie again because a lot of the things set up just never will ever get addressed. But it fails to kind of wrap up this story because they had plans for a third one, so I think that does hurt the ending of this movie. And I think just having it as PG-13 again, just like, I don't know why Salvation and then this one just went to the PG-13 ratings. I don't get it. I didn't really think about it when I was watching the movie, but it's just frustrating that they kept switching back and forth. Overall, I think I really enjoyed this movie much more than I anticipated I would, and much more than most people do. And I think it helps me in this case with the first time watches is that I didn't really grow up with the Terminator franchise, so I don't have a lot of that nostalgia for it where I could see someone watching this and fucking hating it. I'm just not in that boat. I honestly kind of enjoyed it. But at the same time, when it wrapped up, it had a lot going for it, but looking back on it, there wasn't like a memorable scene or an action set piece that really stood out. It's a bland, safe, kind of a little bit of a nothing burger of a movie that was afraid to really commit to some of the differences that they were going for. Like I said, I'm more positive on this movie than I thought I'd be, but if I ever really want to watch a Terminator movie, I enjoyed this, but I'm not going to go back to this. And that's just kind of what I'm left with. For my rating for this movie is, again, I own it only because I got that box set on sale. Only because I got it on sale. It was a good sale. With this one, I'm a little indifferent on owning it. Like, I don't mind that I own it, but at the same time, I wish it made my box set a little bit smaller so I'd have more room for other better movies. I could see myself rewatching this, maybe visiting it again just for fun, just for some of that over-the-top stuff that they do with John Connor and the wacky ideas that they bring to this. I really have no reason to, and I don't think I will. But I'm still kind of positive on this. I'd give this a positive review. I do think it's worth a watch, especially if you've never seen it before and just only heard shit about it. Go in with low expectations, just try to have fun with it and seeing it as kind of like this Elseworld Terminator adventure. That's about it, guys. You have my thoughts on Terminator Genisys. Let me know down below what you thought about this movie, if you saw it when it first came out. Let me know down below. Look forward to the Terminator Dark Fate review coming very soon. And thank you again for anyone watching these videos. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for watching ZakIsCinema. Go be lonely, okay? Goodbye.